Thank you for browsing page 121. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of supplements I looked at very early in my channel's existence. We're going to take a look at Dungeon Geomorphs and Monster and Treasure Assortment. These are two other DM supplements I bought, treasure assortments I bought in 81. And this guy I bought, I think, also in 81. I don't think I bought my copy in 80. I think I bought it in 81. But these were handy Dungeon Master Assistant pieces, and I'm going to take a quick look through them. The Dungeon Geomorphs is going to go first. This is set 1 to 3, which has basic dungeons, caves and caverns, and lower dungeons. And here we go. So this book I found a little less useful than I had hoped. These all came shrink wrapped, of course, so you couldn't really browse through it to see what was in it. And what we got was one page of instructions of how to use the Dungeon Geomorphs, how to read the different glyphs and such on them. We knew what a door was and a secret door and a pit covered and things like that. So this was an entire basic dungeon all set for you, and you would just peel it out of the book and you would have it. We got every other page was blank because it was all intended to be pulled out and assembled. So rather than draw your own dungeon, you could just take these guys out and use them, which is a cool idea, except even by 81, I had been drawing my own dungeons for a while and found I didn't really need this book as much as I had hoped. I got a few ideas out of it. Some of the angled dungeons and stuff like that I had not really done too much of, so I did take some ideas from it. And there are even a few that I flat copied. Here's some caves and caverns. I had done a little bit with that, but not much. It was kind of nice to see some examples. And then I have this guy, which I think is part of it, as I know it's really hard to read, is very faded, but sample level matrix key. And I'm not sure if this was part of it or not. It sure looks like the exact same style, so I'm thinking it is. This was not stapled in or attached in any way. It was all just loose like this. Now this is my copy of it, and it's entirely possible after 40 years I'm forgetting that I put some other supplement in it, but I think this was part of the original. If you know, please let me know in the comments. Dungeon Geomorphs set 2 caves and caverns. Yeah, then this was part of it. They just took what they had done in 1977 and they slipped it into here. So there you have Dungeon Geomorphs, Caves and Caverns. And then we continue on Caves and Caverns. And like I say, every other page is blank. Lower dungeons. I actually spent a lot of my time looking at the lower dungeons and taking different ideas out of here. More than really anything else in this book, just because I was still fairly new to crafting a dungeon and coming up with a plausible layout and that sort of thing. Why anybody would build a dungeon like this, I couldn't tell you, but that's the crux of the entire game. So they did. And now it's in there, and there's monsters or whatever in there. So that's the entire book. I have to admit, I was disappointed. There's no real tips in here on how to be a dungeon master, how to run your game, how to set up your dungeons even. It's just a bunch of pictures. So I was feeling a little disappointed for having spent, I believe it was $6 back in 1981, which, by the way, was pretty dear. I was making about $3.45 at the time. So pretty expensive for those days. And then we got the Monster and Treasure Assortment. And this is sets 1 to 3, levels 1 to 9. And if you're running out of ideas to stock your dungeon full of monsters and treasures, this is the answer. And the latest copyright on this is 1980. And like I say, I believe I picked this up in the summer of 81. This one gave me what I was looking for. This has a lot of dungeon monsters and treasure, lots of tips on how to do it, how to have your treasure contained. I used the heck out of this book. This was carried with me all the time, especially if I was caught unprepared for a game for whatever reason, or our dungeon master dropped out at the last minute, or a game just popped up. I would keep this guy with me, so I'd always have some means to do it. But for your first level encounters, number 51, Conjurers, 1 to 2, a couple of magic users wandering around. Just some interesting encounters based on the level. So here we go. Second level. And you could modify them as you saw fit. Nice original artwork to this. The original flavor D&D. We're up to third level. I used to like that they always had like dwarves and bandits. Pretty ordinary stuff for early D&D. Level 4, we're getting up to carrion crawlers, which are incredibly tough. Lamias, which are very, very tough. Swashbucklers. I love the fighters that are known by the level title that we never used even back then. Some ogres, or ogre magi. I'm not sure which they're supposed to be. But really cool. It gave me a nice exposure for higher level, because by the summer of 81, we weren't really doing much with higher level. Our characters had only progressed, those that survived, had only progressed to maybe 8th level, thereabouts. I was part of a number of campaigns, but we didn't have a ton to go on as far as what monsters would fit what. I was still learning how to not do a total party kill every time I whipped up a game. This book did help in that regard. I loved reading over the lists of all the random monsters. We're up to level 7 now. We're getting Displacer Beasts, Black Pudding, Minotaurs, Bugbears. Minotaurs were always popular at our table. Still are. And then we get to 8th level. So we start with Evil Patriarchs, Evil Clerics, Hill Giants. We get Black Widow Spiders, some Lords, which are fighters. We get Shriekers. I always love Shriekers. Those showed up a ton in my early games. I still use them. And then we go to level 9. Superheroes. I know that's 8th level. I always liked the superhero level. And on through that. And then we go to beautiful artwork there. I love this artwork. And then we go to treasure based on level. And this was really helpful too, because I didn't want to overload my characters, but I didn't want to undercut them either. I wanted to give them what they should. So I used this as a balancing thing. I would always throw in magic as I saw fit, but I would use this to kind of balance out what I was doing. This is very, very helpful in that regard. And even today, if anybody's new to DMing, I would recommend these books. They're available as PDFs on DriveThruRPG, or I would recommend this book. The Dungeon Geomorphs, I don't really think you would need, but maybe you want it. So there we go. We're going all the way up to level 9. We lead with a cursed item, Helm of Change Alignment. Have some fun with those guys. And so on through the book. So that's the end of the book for 33 pages. And then the back cover giving us 34. Great era artwork for D&D. This is from 1980. I love this stuff. I love the idea that he's stealing a loving cup. That's just great. So there you have it. That's Monster Treasure and Treasure Assortment and Dungeon Geomorphs. Dungeon Geomorphs, not so much a fan. It's something I have, and it is in my library. But the Monster and Treasure Assortment, yes, I was very excited. This was right there with Rogue's Gallery to me as far as important to have on my shelf. I still will browse it just for nostalgia more than anything else. I don't really take much from it anymore, but occasionally I'll just thumb through it like I just did and go, oh, I can use this monster. I hadn't thought about them. I haven't used them in a few years. So there you have it. Some look back to the very early days of AD&D. And this one was published for D&D. Actually, so was this, Dungeons & Dragons. So AD&D was still aborning when these were published, but useful for D&D or AD&D, and very useful for their time. But that's all I've got to say today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Please leave me comments below. Like and subscribe if you would. Take a look at the Patreon, and I'll see you next time.